Warning: this content includes discussions of traumatic incidents involving law enforcement, including fatal encounters and critical injuries. Discretion is advised.
They just opened fire on the car, and I just happened to drive on the scene. I wasn't dispatched to it. When I ran up to the car, somebody yelled, "Oh my God, the baby's been shot." And there on the ground in a little baby infant seat as a 1-month-old, one of the bullets hit her in the face.
Before we get started here, I just wanted to thank you so much for having your assistant reach out to us. I was honored, truly beside myself. Like what a wonderful opportunity to talk to someone like you.
No, it's my pleasure.
All right, guys, we ready to get started?
Hi, Mark.
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Mark. Hey, Mark Halley.
The Mark Halley Show.
How did you do it and why? This is Mark Halley, and this is the Mark Halley Show. And today we have a great guest by the name of Mr. Randy Sutton. Randy spent 35 years as a police officer. He is the founder of the Wounded Blue, which is designed to help injured police officers. He's the author of 4 books, I guess just recently put out the 5th. He has a show on YouTube, and also, and most importantly, recently spoke at the Republican National Convention. Let's start at the top here. The Republican National Conference. I mean, that's got to make guys' knees chatter a little bit up, stepping there in front of all those folks.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It was a moment that I will carry in my heart forever. And I've been doing public speaking for many, many years. I've been in movies, been on television. I didn't expect to get the opportunity to speak there. It really came out of nowhere. I get a phone call one day, and this woman says, "I'm from the Republican National Convention, and your name has been submitted to be a speaker." And I was
Yikes.
like, "It has? By who?" And she gave me a name, and I'd never heard of this person. Mm-hmm. So she said, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Well, hell yeah."
Yeah, I'm on.
And so she gave me the criteria for it, and said, "Are you available for a conference call tomorrow?" So there was several women on this conference call. They were asking all about me, and they'd clearly done their homework. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they said, "You know what? You're our choice." And then they said, "We'll have a speechwriter contact you." And I said, "Well, I don't really need a speechwriter. I can write my own." And she says,
"I've done this all my life.
You will have a speechwriter." I said, "Okay, have a speechwriter call me." So he put me in touch with a speechwriter, and he says, "I'll be happy to write your speech for you." And I said, "Listen, I don't need you to write my speech for me. I can do it myself." And he said, "Okay, tell you what, go ahead. You have 300 words, no more."
300 words.
And I went, 300 words. I said, it's easier to write 1,500 words than 300 words.
Yeah, you got to you really chop it up to get down to 3.
He says that's what you got. I said, "Okay." So I wrote, it was 300 words exactly, submitted to him, and he made some changes. Then I made some changes to his changes, and then it had to go up the chain.
Oh boy.
But you know what they did? They actually added some of my original verbiage in there.
I was going to say that because you're talking longer. Sorry for the interruption. I listened to it and I'm like, that's not 300 words.
It was 379 words to be exact.
Ooh.
Okay. So they said, "Okay, but you can't deviate from the speech." I said, "Okay." So this was like 2 weeks before the convention. Wow. So there wasn't a lot of time to prepare here. They sent me a ticket and they flew me over there, and put me up in a beautiful hotel and showed me the arena. And I mean, it's pretty impressive, right? And then they said, "Okay, listen, you have 2 hours to practice tomorrow." So the next day I'm in this. They had it set up exactly like the podium at on the main stage, and there was the speechwriter that I had met. There was a coach. There was a transcriber. I mean, it was they
no
had
fooling around. No fooling around.
They had it together, right?
Uh-huh.
So they say, "Okay, listen, you got 2 hours to practice. let's give it a run through. But whatever you do, you don't deviate one word from this speech. And I said,
Great.
okay, got it. So there was a teleprompter on my left, teleprompter on my right, teleprompter in the center. And I said what I said, and they looked at each other and they said, I think we're done for the day. You do it like that, and you'll knock it out of the park.
Now, you
So-
are you a, they say there's speakers that work, I do public speaking, and I was trained, with a guy who said, here's how you do it and all. And the first thing they did is they gave me, like a transcript, and I read it, and then I spoke it. And he said to me, you can't read you're no good reading off a screen. You have to be ad hoc, where we have 3 roughly subject matters, 10 minutes each, roughly, and you just got to flow. Which of the two would you consider yourselves? Or
I'm
yourself?
more of a contemporaneous speaker.
Yeah.
That's more my style. But there was no choice here. I mean, this was really, really structured, and they weren't taking any chances. You will speak, and you will only speak those words. I said, okay, you got it. So
This is
the
big
next
money,
day-
kiddo.
oh yeah. This is called zero money, but an unbelievable experience.
I
So the
imagine.
next day, all the speakers for the night are there. Everybody, I mean, the senators, the Congress people, everybody's in one big room until you're supposed to go on stage, and then they bring you up to the green room, which is right off the stage, and it's me, and it's Ron DeSantis.
Oh,
And
great.
Ted Cruz.
Whoa, pretty cool to meet them.
And suddenly I started getting a little, wait a minute. The reality is hitting me. I'm in some pretty incredible company here, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and I got a little dry mouth, I must admit. And then Ted Cruz was before me. And then I'm on stage, and they actually have a guy standing behind the stage with his hand on your back to push you out on the stage, right?
Because they're afraid of just stage fright. You just lock up.
Stage fright, right? So Ted Cruz gets done, and I walk out. They announce me, and I've got to tell you, I've never had an experience like this in my life. The energy in that room, as I walked out on the stage, there were 10,000 people screaming, "Back the blue, back the blue."
That's cool.
And I got it. So all the nervousness left me, and I was feeling so incredibly energized. It felt like lightning bolts were entering my body as I walked out onto that stage. And it was incredible. Now, I got to tell you this, that keeping in mind, they told me you don't deviate from this speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm looking right at the President Trump.
That's exciting.
And I mean, our eyes are locked on to one another, even though there's 10,000 people. And as I got to the finish of the speech, I could not help myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, before I complete my words, there's one thing I need to do, and that's salute my president. And
Cool.
those were not in the plans. I did in fact deviate, but what are they going to do? Fire me? Right?
That's a good point. This thing's done.
And that moment when I saluted him and he stood up and saluted me back will be a memory etched in my mind forever. And not only that, I received hundreds of messages after that speech from cops from all over the nation saying, we felt like you guys were saluting us.
As well you
and
were.
That was, you're right. And it was, but that moment, I got to tell you, I'll never have another moment like that, Mark, but I will look back on that forever.
Well, I would think if you didn't, I would say, really? You didn't think that? I mean, they called you up in front of 10,000 people, and the president
and
of the United
30 million watching, and 30 million watching.
Yeah, I watched you walk up there, and I had looked you up and done some stuff, and then I turned it on first, and I was like, this guy must be, I mean, I'm surprised you didn't just run back. They put you up there and you just turn around and run, or that guy in the back would be pushing you. You'd be running back and forth.
This is history.
Yeah.
This is history being made. And the gravity of that was not lost on me.
I would imagine not. Well, first off, I've never done it. I've stepped in front of maybe 200, 300 people. And even then, you float into this zone where the adrenaline's running. So I'm presuming you get out there and it's just like zone time. You're locked. Do you even notice the times passing?
Oh, it was every moment that I was on that stage, I was aware of. It was very, very vibrant.
Yeah, yeah. And let's say, when you roll back, or who are some of the people that you got a chance to just chat with or say thanks? Or sounds like, Cruz, DeSantis. These are not new guys to the game. Do you get a chance to kind of interact with them to some extent?
Oh, I did. Absolutely. We're up in the green room together, and both of them were complete gentlemen. They were normal human beings. We joked, we laughed. I complimented Ted Cruz on his incredible cowboy boots. They were pretty cool. They were pretty bad. They were
These weren't
Walmart. And I had actually had I knew somebody on the security team for Ron DeSantis. So anyway, we had a normal conversation. They were not self-centered. They were not aloof. They were we're all in this together, and let's go out there and do it.
So, in addition, in your life, you've written 4 books, and now there's a 5th one coming out. What inspired you to do that?
I never intended to be a writer. I can tell you that. So, I was a police officer in Princeton, New Jersey, for 10 years.
Okay,
and a small town cop.
Yep.
That was my hometown.
I know it well.
And a 32 officer department. And I tell you, quite honestly, I was just bored to death there. I was a detective when I had 10 years on. I was at the top of my pay scale. I had a great life, but I just was not being fulfilled by the police work, and I needed more action. So I went out to Las Vegas. And I started my career all over again. I had to take the police test, go through the academy and everything.
Does that mean less pay?
What's that?
Does that mean less pay?
Oh, I took a $10,000 pay cut.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was very substantial, and start off as a rookie again. So it was an adventure, one that I never looked back upon. It was the best move I ever made, but it afforded me opportunities to do things I never would have anywhere else. And but I just wanted to be a cop. That's what I loved doing. Well,
I read a little about in your book that your father had impact on you, and something, sitting around and seeing your awards, and him saying, I think, I'm proud of you, son, or that may not be the perfect words, but it was something along that lines.
Very much so. My parents were very proud of me. My grandfather was a deputy sheriff who'd been shot in the line of duty. Yeah. So it was, I knew what I was going to be from the time I was a little kid. But now I'm a Vegas cop. And I was very fortunate to be given the opportunity to be early on in my career to be on the TV show Cops, and I was chosen, wound up to be one of the most featured officers on the show.
Cool.
So then, as a result of that, I wound up getting a role in the movie Casino.
Did you really? Now I missed that. I'm sorry. In my various digging around about you, I missed that.
I've been in a number of movies, but what happened was I get a phone call one day. Randy, I'm a casting agent, and there's going to be a film shot in Vegas, and the director is looking for realism in the part of a police officer. Would you come down to an audition? And I'm always up for a new adventure. So I said, sure.
Yeah.
And I walk into the suite at the old Riviera Hotel, and who's standing there but Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese?
Whoa.
And it's for the film Casino.
Great movie. It
was a great movie. It was. But I didn't have any knowledge that it was going to be those two guys that I was going to be auditioning in front of. And usually when you do an audition, they give you some lines to read and you read them with the director. I started telling them stories about being a Vegas cop, and they both looked at each other and they said, "You got the part." And
Wow.
that's how I got into
Now you're like, wow. So now, was it Joe Pesci was in that, I think? Wasn't he in that?
Yep,
I
Joe
think so.
Pesci, Don Rickles,
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
Sharon
right.
Stone.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah. She was well, she got herself into a little bit of problem in that one, but not a bad looking
she,
lady.
no, she was quite attractive, but she had some issues.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
But that gave me some notoriety that I would never have had. You know, here I am, being on Cops, and then in this movie, and then it was in another couple of movies after that with Sandra Bullock,
Mm-hmm.
and anyway, so
you're bumping around with these folks. That must be a real. I'm sorry to break in there, but that must have been. I mean, you're meeting De Niro and Martin Scorsese, and are you? I guess you're just having conversation with them to some extent.
Oh yeah, it was very fun. This was back in the day when Robert De Niro was personable and normal.
Mm-hmm.
and,
he's denormalized.
So we had great conversations. He treated me like a gentleman. So it was a great experience. Now, we were talking about books, and as I mentioned, I never intended to be a writer. Never intended to be an actor.
Let me interrupt you
either.
there. I read a lot, and I thought it was well written. Was that you writing it, or was that somebody helping you with it, or how did?
No, I write all my own stuff.
Yeah, because I read tons of it, and I've read things done by, whatever police, army guys, whatever it may be, and it can be pretty herky-jerky if you're a common reader. And I started reading it, and within a couple chapters and a couple paragraphs, I'm like, wow, it's well written. It really was. I was impressed.
Well, what started my writing career, I had a life-changing experience when I was a police sergeant, where I saved the life of a 1-month-old baby who'd been shot in the face in a drive-by shooting.
Oh.
And that night, what happened was 3 gangbangers pulled up alongside a perfectly innocent car in a gang initiation, is what we later found out. Mom and dad and a little 1-month-old baby in the car in the evening, and they just opened fire on the car for no reason whatsoever. And the father drove up on the sidewalk, and there's bullet holes all over the car. And I just happened to drive on the scene. I wasn't dispatched to it. I literally was placed in a position just minutes after it happened to come upon the scene. And so I jump out of the car. I have no idea what's going on, but there's a car on the side of the road, people running around screaming, bullet holes in the car. And when I ran up to the car, somebody yelled, "Oh my God, the baby's been shot." And there on the ground in a little baby infant seat is a 1-month-old. And one of the bullets hit her in the face.
Oh, good God.
And,
oh, good God.
And the protocol is you call for an ambulance, and you let medical do their thing. But when I checked the baby, she wasn't breathing. And I knew that if I waited for the ambulance, she was going to die.
Shot in the face. So, I mean, now
shot in the face.
Side, or it sounds just like the
what
child
happened
was dead.
The child had stopped breathing. And what happened when the bullet hit her in the face, a bunch of the tissue and stuff went down her throat and choked her.
Mm-hmm.
And so first patrol car that got there, I grabbed the baby and I said, get to the medical center. Tell them we're bringing in a baby that's not breathing, because every second counts here.
Sure.
Well, I was able to clear her airway and give her mouth to mouth. And because I was there literally within minutes of this happening, I was able to bring her back.
Really?
And no brain damage.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, well, I presume you just fly into like training, adrenaline. You're just boom just right there. You just snap into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was no stranger. I was an experienced police officer. I've seen plenty of death and plenty of, gunshots. And this wasn't a strange now, but being placed in an opportunity to save a life, that's a whole different world.
Well, I can promise you I've never been there.
When we got to the hospital, the baby started crying, so I knew she was alive. After I cleared her airway and gave her mouth to mouth, and passed her off to the emergency room people, and they did their magic. And that night was such a emotional experience for me that I went home and wrote the story. I didn't have anything to do with it. I just felt like I needed to put it on paper. So I grabbed a yellow pad and a bottle of scotch and a pen,
mm-hmm.
and wrote that story called Her Name Was Jackie. And that was it, man. I didn't have anything to do with it. I felt better after I wrote it.
Sure.
And I put it in a drawer. And that was 1998. Well, 3 years later, the World Trade Center gets attacked.
I remember
and it's
that
the deadliest day in law enforcement history. And I felt like I needed to do something to help the New York Police Department and the Port Authority. And I was frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And then I remembered that I had that story in that drawer. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. Every cop I know has a story like this.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine all of them, but quite a few of them.
Almost everybody has a story to tell.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to ask them to write that story. And then I'm going to put it in a book, and I'm going to donate all the royalties to the Widows and Orphans Fund for the cops who were killed 9/11.
Yeah, so that's one story. But now you have quite a few of them in the book I read.
Okay. Well, this was my first book. This was called True Blue: Police Stories by Those Who Have Lived Them.
Yep.
And that was my story, and then I wrote all the intersecting, the forewords for all the other stories from all the other cops that wrote. Well, what happened was that story won first place in the national writing contest.
Wow!
And
congratulations.
The editor-in-chief at St. Martin's Press, who published that book, said, "Randy, I want you to write your own stories." And that became my book, A Cop's Life. That's what you read.
Yeah.
And that's the name of my podcast too, A Cop's Life.
Mm-hmm.
After that book,
I was unaware that you did a podcast. I just maybe I overlooked it. And what's the name of your podcast?
A Cop's Life.
A Cop's Life. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because when I was searching around for you, I did not find that. I found well, it doesn't matter at this point. That's one I had not noticed. So A Cop's Life, a podcast.
Yep, and that's on all the Spotify, all the platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very personal stories, similar to the ones that were in my book, but they're stories not only about me, but stories from cops from all over the nation that tell a very personal point of view, unlike most stories that you'll hear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I became a writer. And just this week, my new book was released called Rescuing 911, The Fight for America's Safety. This is an entirely different kind of book. This is how we got into the law enforcement crisis and what we need to do to get out of it. And I point out very graphically a lot of the realities that have faced law enforcement. And so this is all part of my mission. Like I said, I never intended to be a writer. I never intended to be in the movies. I never intended to be on TV. All of these things happened to me, and I believe they happened for a reason. Then I've had
clearly there's other... some. Are you? Do you have a Christian faith or any particular faith, or are you just driven?
I consider myself spiritual.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I consider but I've had the saving Jackie, who's, by the way, is still very much a part of my life to this day. Was a life-changing moment. But I had another life-changing moment prior to that, where I survived a gunfight that I, by all rights, never should have survived.
I believe that was in the book I read.
That was in the book, yes.
Yeah.
And that moment changed my life in many, many ways, including why did I not die? I gave I call that the journey of why. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that guided many, many instances in my life to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully believe that I didn't die that night because I had not completed whatever mission I was placed here to do.
How old were
And
you when that happened? When the Jackie, the little
that
girl?
I was late 30s.
Okay. Okay. Still a
Yeah,
young
late
man,
30s.
in my view, a young man.
Um, yeah. I joined the police department. Let's see, 1986. So I was in my early 40s
When you
when that
joined.
when Jack no
Oh,
no
no, no,
when I
no.
when Jackie happened.
Okay. Okay. And now you were in one that you mentioned that you should have gotten killed, and I think in that one was the young man had this massive automatic AK, whatever called AK-15. I don't even know the names of them, but he was blasting away if I remember correctly.
Well, no, he was armed with a pistol. He
What
was
was
a
the?
school
Oh, okay.
shooter.
Oh,
He
school.
was
There was
shoot.
the other kid that I read about that was in a house who was just, and I think didn't one of your friends pass away in that one, get shot and
Yes,
killed?
yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
correct.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
I've lost a lot. I've lost comrades. I've lost friends. Um, on the incident that occurred with me, we were in a literally toe-to-toe gunfight when my gun jammed, and how he did not kill me is still to this day a mystery for me. But I believe that it didn't happen because I hadn't completed my mission. So that journey has been with me for the rest of my life, and I fully believe that my mission was to create the Wounded Blue, which is the charity that I began 5 years ago, and to help injured and disabled officers across this nation.
And imagine, so your funding is coming from obviously. I'm hopeful that some folks with a good chunk of money and everybody throwing 5, 10, $20 in there.
Yeah, I have everything that comes my way is is given by people who want to help law enforcement, and I don't take a salary. I live on my pension.
Mm-hmm.
All the money that comes in goes to operations and to helping cops. We've helped more than 15,000 American law enforcement officers who have been injured either physically or emotionally and psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done some amazing work, touched many, many lives, saved marriages, saved careers, saved lives. And that's really what I am devoted to
Yeah, I heard an
at this
interview
part
with
of
a
my
couple. I
life.
heard an interview with a couple folks that were PTSD. Had been through these horrible events, and
Right.
the stories were pretty profound. And when you, so let's say somebody who says to you, I've been psychologically and or physically damaged through service. How how do you go about? You can't have the capacity to help all of them, can you? Or you might, obviously you're passing it out to services around you, but is there some way that you would go through and, I guess for lack of a better term, triage, where you'd say, wow, this guy's or gal is really on the edge while others are not. And how do you sift through that?
Well, I have a whole team of police officers that are are the Wounded Blue. My entire
Mm.
team is made up of cops who have
Oh,
been.
yeah, you're right, because that's how many is there. God, I saw the organization. It must have been what, if 15 or 20 different people that were all in that. I mean, there was pictures of them, and
Yeah,
who are we?
yeah. Right. Now I have an amazing team of people. Every one of my officers, I've got people who have been blinded, people who are in wheelchairs, people who have faced incredible darkness from their experiences. And even though through those injuries, they continue to help their brothers and sisters. That's the magic of the Wounded Blue. I am right now, as you and I are speaking, I am in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Okay.
And the reason I'm here is because this police department, which is one of the best I've ever seen, is struggling because of an incredible, just an incredible amount of trauma that these men and women have experienced, including the brutal murder of one of their officers. Shortly after that, the suicide of another officer. Shortly after that, the wrongful conviction on a perfectly justifiable shooting motivated by politics, which is now being fought in the courts, and I believe we will win. And then a mass shooting, which included children being killed. And these men and women have seen so much, have faced so much trauma that their chief said to me, Randy, I don't know what to do to help them.
And I presume some of them are, like it or not, all the treatment in the world is not going to help them, overcome these things. I mean, you can, there's some people who just don't have that ability. And
that's why we have a terrible suicide rate. And that's what we fight literally every single day. But coping with trauma, coping with I can tell you stories that would literally curdle your blood of what these men and women experience. And learning to cope with these experiences is how we survive. And that's what the Wounded Blue does, is we help. And the Wounded Blue, our motto is never forgotten, never alone.
Yeah.
Because we walk alongside these men and women literally for as long as we need to get them through it.
Yeah. And
it's pretty amazing stuff.
What was the psychological impact on you? Did you have a terrible time overcoming these things, or were you fortunate where it didn't penetrate you as much?
Oh, I faced the darkness. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that. Well, I faced the darkness in some very major ways. But the reason that I came about creating the Wounded Blue was the end of my career. I didn't intend to retire when I did, but I suffered a stroke in my police car.
Really?
And it ended my police career.
At what age? You're a young man. At what age?
52. Okay. 52, after 34 years of police service. It was literally the most frightening moment of my life. And I've been in some frightening moments.
Yeah.
I was on patrol. I was a lieutenant. I spent my entire lieutenant's career on the graveyard shift, which in Vegas is where the action is.
Yeah.
And I was on patrol right on Las Vegas Boulevard, the famous strip.
Yeah.
Had a young cop with me. We're talking like I'm talking to you, and suddenly I literally felt my brain slowing down, and started talking slower, and realized I was having a stroke.
Yeah.
And stopped the police car, and I said, "Get me medical. I'm having a stroke."
And
started speaking gibberish, then lost the ability to speak and move altogether, and crumpled to the pavement, unable to move, scared to death, not even afraid of dying, but afraid of living.
Yeah.
Like that. And tourists are walking by me, taking my picture, laying there.
Thanks.
Well, what happened? And then once again, that angel that was on my shoulder, my whole career, was with me again. And the blood clot went through my brain, did some damage, but clearly I survived. And but it ended my police career. 3 weeks before that, my mother had died in my arms. And a couple months before that, I was involved in my fifth shooting, a fatal gunfight.
Wow,
so there was a lot of
stuff is piling up here.
There was a lot going on. But what happened next would change the trajectory of my life. And that is that my own police department turned its back on me and said, "We're not paying your medical bills. We're not giving you your benefits."
That'll leave you pissed off.
And I said, wait a minute. What are you talking about? You have to. It's the law. Yeah, will make us. And that feeling of betrayal, abandonment, brought me into the darkness.
You put some 34 years down on this thing, and they're going to say, "No, you don't get the cash."
And I was, wait a minute, you can't do that. I went to go see the sheriff who I worked with for 24 years, and I said, "How do you treat me like this?" And he said, "Randy, this isn't personal. It's just business. It's just business."
Oh yeah, thanks.
And he was telling me the truth, because you see, I was no longer a necessary part of. I was now a liability, a financial liability.
Yeah, who wants you around?
So they fought me, and they fought me, and they fought me. I had to get a lawyer. I had to go through the court system.
Yeah, I'm thinking you must have been in front of this guy. I mean, this guy is telling you this, and
yeah,
what's going through your mind? Just like you must be just dumbstruck.
Complete disbelief and betrayal is the only word that I can utilize. And so eventually I won. But you see, they were, and the reality of this was they knew I would win.
Mm-hmm.
They also knew it would take well over a year. So they were hoping I would die in the meantime.
Oh, great.
Which meant they wouldn't have to pay. Now that's a very harsh reality when you're a cop, to think that the city that you served or the community you served would throw you away like an old shoe. Mm-hmm. And now I win. They pay my medical bills. They've already ruined my credit and screwed me up. And then because I was on Cops, in movies, writing books, so visible in the law enforcement community, cops started reaching out to me. "Randy, I know you don't know me, but I was shot in the line of duty, and my chief never even visited me in the hospital, and they've thrown me away. Randy, I know you don't know me, but I was hit in my police car and paralyzed from the waist down. They've abandoned me." 1, 2, 6, 8, 10 cops reaching out to me, not because I could do anything, but only because I was visible in their life out of desperation. And I went, oh my God, this is a national issue.
Yeah.
There's got to be resources for them.
Yeah.
And everyone ended the same way.
So does that leave you does that leave you with a very tainted view, of the whole police community, or the way that we police or run the police services around our country?
It was shocking. And I came to realize, and every of these communications said, "I feel abandoned, I feel alone," and then the worst was, "I wish I'd never survived that night. I wish I died."
Mm-hmm.
Heartbreaking stuff.
Yeah.
And they just needed somebody to let them know they were not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I created the Wounded Blue.
And that takes some time. Takes some time to set that up. It must have taken.
It took years. It's been now. We've been in service for a little over 5 years and helped more than 15,000 cops. That's an amazing. And we haven't even started. We haven't even touched the surface. Every day every day I get another heartbreaking story. Every day I hear of another suicide. Every day I hear of someone who has been severely injured in the line of duty and literally tossed aside by their department.
Mm-hmm.
And
so your reaction.
It's not like.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's not like that everywhere. There are departments that care. There are like Las Cruces, where I'm at right now. This department cares about its people, cares enough to bring in my group to provide the services of the Wounded Blue. There are other departments, like if you're in New York City and you get shot or you get, severely injured in the line of duty, you're going to be taken care of the rest of your life. You're going to get a decent pension. You're going to get medical, but that's not the way it is everywhere. And we fight for these men and women, and that's what we do. That's my mission.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, there's been all the divisiveness between the police and people, which, I'm on the side of, effectively, I'm sure there's bad apples out there, but it's a bunch of bullshit. I have 2 or 3 friends that are cops, more than that, 5 or 6 of them. And, they're really great guys. What is your reaction over the past few years, past gosh, it must be 5 or 10 years, the effectively social attack on the police, where, even my kids at times would be that way. And I used to ride downtown. We're in a small town, and I would say, "Oh, you have a problem with the police?" They go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I'd say, "Hey, why don't we ride over to that young man in that car over there? And you want to say hi to him? Does he look like a bad guy? Let's go over and say hi." "Oh, no, 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 no. That'd be embarrassing." And I'm like, well, you really think he's sitting here out front of the Rite Aid in a little town and he's just a bad guy? And that was that polluted a lot of minds. How do you respond to that? I mean, within your organization, I don't know if you can, or just in your mind.
Oh no, I've been combating that. Well, hell, that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
I wrote the book, Rescuing 911, the fight for America's safety, for the exact purpose of what you just spoke about. We have to change the perspective because it's been polluted, it's been tainted by the political agendas of those who hate America. The reality is this: we're facing a law enforcement crisis that we've never seen before. We have fewer cops on the street now than we did 10 years ago.
You can't even get them to come in. They're giving them bonuses to come in.
Correct. So retaining cops has become a huge challenge. Cops are just saying, we're not doing it anymore. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah,
they're
why?
retiring early. They're just quitting, and then we can't we can't retain them. We can't recruit them, and that is all part of the agenda of those who hate America. They have made this happen, and as a result, there's a crisis of criminal justice in America. I see it every single day. I see the effects on the law enforcement community. We literally have a police officer shot every single day in America now. It's unbelievable. Last year, 79,000 police officers were physically attacked. 79,000. That's up from 50,000 just 7 years ago.
Wow. Now,
why is that happening?
Did you see the thing in Seattle where they took over a city block? Then they took over the police department. I thought that's our last. I read a lot of medieval stuff. Like, where is it that you defend? That's why you got guns. Right. I mean, they're going to take the thing, and the mayor is saying things like something. Correct me if I'm wrong, but something about the summer's going to be good, or something along those lines. Summer of love. Yeah, and the poor woman who was the police department woman, she's getting up there and saying, this is bullshit. And they want to write a new constitution in the city, in this one block area. I mean, was that going on around the country, or was that kind of unique to Seattle, or whatever?
Well, Seattle was one of the premier cities of the insanity. Yeah. But Portland was another. There have been several cities that they actually allowed. The reality is that they literally gave up the police station to the attack.
I don't know how.
In fact, I spoke to the officers who were forced to surrender. Basically, they ran for their lives because the mayor gave it up. It's absolutely outrageous. What has taken place, and the police officers have been literally used as cannon fodder.
Yeah, they're like the infantry. Just head out there and get lit up.
Right. So this is something that we are combating every single day. Literally, that's why I wrote the book, because we have to unite America. And we saw a lot of it at this last election, where many of the insane ideologies of the left, have been brought to light,
smacked
and the
down.
People said, right, but it's still going on. It's going on all over the country in many, many areas. you can't flip the switch and turn back. Okay, we support law enforcement again. It's not happening.
No.
It will take a generation to come to terms with the losses that we have faced.
Yeah, to turn the wheel. I live in suburban Seattle, and let's just say this: I'm, what, I am on an island. If you're on the right, I mean, I'm literally on an island, and I say to people, the one little town I'm in has done me great. I raised 5 daughters. I won't say anything bad about it. I live in Woodinville, Washington. I am from Philadelphia. And when my life ends, take my ashes and take them back to Philadelphia. That's enough said. It just 2 of my friends, 55 or not even, both of them good friends. We go to see them at the gym all the time. They just left. And they also say the bummer with them is that when a young guy comes on, when they were younger, you would come on and the guy who's a bunch older than you would be telling you how great the department is and what a great service he's doing. Now he goes, you can't say that to these young guys. You try just because you want to do well for the police department, but they're just like, I don't have a good reason. That really pollutes the water. So I guess you're trying to get these guys also to, and I do think most police guys do, puff up your chest. You're doing the right thing. You're pushing the ball even against this tide that's pushing hard against you. I guess.
Well, I often speak to police agencies and groups all over the nation. And one of the things that I really, truly emphasize is pride. The pride in yourself of what you do, because there is no greater job when it comes down to commitment and patriotism than that of being a police officer. You are literally the front line of what defends this country.
Yeah.
And the Constitution of this magnificent nation of ours. We fight for that Constitution. And to understand the importance of that mission is what I try to instill in others.
Yeah.
That you are a warrior and you're fighting sometimes an unseen enemy.
Yeah.
But you
mentioned in one piece of your one of your books that unlike the Army, we have to go out there and quickly serve 2 purposes. We have to be, to help a community, and then boom, all of a sudden you're now a warrior. And that I thought that was a really good point in your one book.
Yeah, because you have to go from being officer friendly to literally taking someone's life that may happen within a split second. That's, military, you serve a deployment and you're done. Police officers are out there every single day, and you're never done until your career is done, and then you've already faced the damage by then. Yeah. So it's a huge challenge. I'm on the front lines right now, fighting for these men and women, and my organization, the Wounded Blue, is literally playing an incredible role in saving officers' lives, careers, marriages, emotional health, and I will never give up this fight.
I have 2 questions for you, and maybe one that would encapsulate everything. If young men or women were sitting here in front of you, and hopefully they are, what would you say to them right now to become an officer? And aside from all our country is losing things that we've discussed, what would you just say to them? Give me an advertisement for what you would say to that young man or woman.
I will say it, and I said it just the other day to someone that contacted me and asked me what I thought about their choice of joining the police department, and I said, there is no more noble profession than that of being an American peace officer. You literally have the ability to change lives, to save lives, to touch lives in ways that you can't even imagine. Every single police officer leaves a legacy. And that legacy is every time that you come in contact with another human being, you leave something of yourself. And I live by a certain philosophy. And that philosophy is this, that you cannot create your destiny, but you can create your legacy. And
That's
that
a cool
is
statement. That's a cool statement.
what that is the philosophy of a warrior. And that is the philosophy that I try to instill in others that do it. There are challenges, but you will grow as a human being in ways that you could never ever expect being an American peace officer.
Well, let me say, Randy, thank you so much, Randy Sutton, for coming on the show. Again, wrote books, been in movies, has his own show, his own podcast, and I'm just glad to have met you. And I hope that somehow we remain within each other's circle as we go on. So once again, thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me, and I wish you nothing but happiness and peace.
The same to you. Thank you for listening to The Mark Halley Show. If you found this story as intriguing as we did, give us a like, share the episode, and subscribe at The Mark Halley Show. New episodes every other Friday. Adios.